On this week's episode of Ride the Lightning, the Tesla unofficial podcast, good news for Tesla fans in the UK, China, and Canada, all for different reasons. Plus, a Tesla owner who's quite well known in the business world holds his own in a CNBC interview. Tesla's annual shareholders meeting is dated, and more. Howdy friends, welcome to episode 196 of Ride the Lightning, the weekly Tesla unofficial podcast for May 5th, 2019. I'm flanked by a whining and crying Daisy the Boxer puppy. I think it's because I've got the door closed and she can hear my wife outside working away. And she's like, I want to be with her, but it'll be a lot less distracting if you're in here, Daisy. Well, I have to say, literally anything feels like a slow news week compared to last week. I really genuinely think, looking back on it, that last week was the single busiest week of Tesla news that I've ever seen since I've been doing this podcast, which is now almost 4 years. We're getting close to that. And I'll tell you, that's saying something because the actual slow news weeks for Tesla are few and far between. On the plus side, when I was doing my notes and preparing for the show this week felt like if you ever played baseball at any level from little league on up, when you walk up to the plate, when you walk up to bat, after swinging your bat in the on deck circle with the big donut weight on it, it just felt light and easy this week. I was like, oh, okay, only 7 smaller stories, no problem, because I think that's what I've got lined up to talk about this week. But yeah, plenty to talk about. So let's get started. And first up is excellent news for the UK. As those of you who are in the UK have probably already heard and likely been emailed about, and many of you already placed your order, yes, Model 3 orders for right-hand drive cars in the UK are now being taken as promised by Elon last week. The initial delivery estimates are June, which means, thinking about it here, the Tesla is probably going to be doing a big run of right-hand drive cars for at least a week or two this month here in May. And then that'll mean that the car carriers that I regularly see heading north up the US 101 freeway towards San Francisco, towards the shipping port there. In fact, just tonight, I went to dinner with my wife down the peninsula and just saw more. I probably saw 2 or 3 of the car carriers loaded with Model 3, well, just all types of Teslas, but particularly Model 3s, and they had the wide rectangular license plate brackets, sort of placeholders on the back, which tells you that they were either going to Europe or China or a mix of both. But I suspect those carriers that those of us in the Bay Area will be continuing to see regularly, probably in the next couple of weeks. If you're maybe able to look closely, I'm sure somebody on Reddit will photograph it. You'll be able to see right-hand drive cars. See that steering wheel over on the right-hand side. So, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Hong Kong. If you guys are out there in my audience, as Elon said, you guys are next and should be very soon. So it sounds like my guess would be that they'll do a run of initial production for the UK, and then maybe while they're all tooled up for the right-hand drive production, maybe do a run of each of those other 4 countries as well. So good stuff coming for those of you who've you right-hand drive reservation holders, you've all been waiting the longest, longer than even the standard battery customers. The RHD cars have been the last to come, and I feel for you guys. It's been over 3 years, and it's going to be, but just a little while longer. Here looks like summer 2019. Well, summer here in the Northern Hemisphere. Australia, I know, is a different story, but glad to see that you guys will all start to get your Model 3s very soon. Next up this week, the annual Tesla shareholder meeting date has been announced. It is typically in early-ish June, and it's just about there once again. It's going to be held on Tuesday, June 11th at 2:30 p.m. Pacific, at the very same place that it typically is, the Computer History Museum located in Mountain View, California, which is not too far from Tesla's Palo Alto headquarters. They're going to be voting on 8 proposals, none of which are particularly sexy at all. In the same way that you remember a few years ago, there was the Solar City acquisition, and even none of them that are controversial either. So I'm going to spare you reading them all because your time is very valuable. So all of that should be a matter of procedure. It will be live streamed, but I'll tell you this, if you own even a single share and you're in the Bay Area or plan to be here, I don't know if I would necessarily recommend making a trip for this. But it is, if you're in town, if it's convenient for you and you're a shareholder, I would encourage you to go because, I haven't been to one. I'm not a shareholder, but I watch them every year. You can get in with just one share. You have to show proof of that in order to gain admittance, but you can get a chance to ask Elon a question directly. They have people you get to line up, and if they can get to you, they'll take your question. And it's a cool opportunity to ask Elon something directly. In years past, there have been, I like to be positive on this show, but there have been some questions that have been asked of Elon that have, shall we say, maybe not been necessarily the best use of that venue and that time. So it's a little bit of a dice roll, but you do have the opportunity to ask. I know you guys out there would have good questions, so you've got a chance for that. Now, if it's like last year, they'll also take questions for consideration ahead of time via Twitter. I would expect that call out to happen maybe about a week beforehand if they do it again, like they did last year. Last year, if you may happen to remember, I was able to sneak one in that way last year via Twitter. Obviously, you don't have to be a shareholder to get a question through to Tesla on Twitter. Also note, if as just a further incentive to maybe go if you're reasonably in the area, the white Roadster, the mule, the rolling mule prototype, was sitting out in front of the event last year. So if you've never seen it, if you'd like to see it, that could be another incentive to attend. Although there's no guarantee that they'll bring it again this year, but there's no reason to think they wouldn't. I mean, why not? It's fun to have out there. It's fun to see. They did it last year, and the car is still not out, so why not have it again this year? I will be that week down at my annual E3 conference, the Electronic Entertainment Expo, which is the big trade show every year for the video game industry. So I'll be down in Los Angeles that week, so I wouldn't be able to attend anyway, even if I were a shareholder. But I'll be doing a regular show that week, and I will have all the highlights for you as usual, as I always do my best to do. Now, speaking of shareholders and Tesla stock, you may have heard about this week. CNBC, which is a network that covers the financial world, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, which I'm sort of looking specifically at those of you maybe outside the U.S. that might not have access to it or be familiar with it. CNBC has a track record that I think is fair to say maybe not the kindest to Tesla. Well, this past week, they had a segment with a gentleman by the name of Chamath Palihapitiya. He is the CEO. I'm pretty sure I got that right. I had to go and look up other YouTube videos that said his name. So I wrote down a pronunciation key for myself in my notes, and I think I've got it correct there. All due respect, Chamath, I hope I got that right. Anyway, he's the CEO of Social Capital, self-made billionaire, big guy in Silicon Valley, to the extent that he is part of the ownership group of the Golden State Warriors. So he's in on that. He's got himself a couple of rings. Anyway, I wanted to play this clip of Chamath on CNBC. This is the unedited segment that I'm going to play you now, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Obviously, you can expect, you can guess what's coming, but this was on a show called the Fast Money Halftime Report. The host's name, the other gentleman you're going to hear on this, his name is Scott Wapner. So take a listen to this, see what you think. It's about 8 minutes long. I'm going to play this, and then I'll come right back and talk about it for a minute. This is, I think this is just very, very interesting and very almost maybe enlightening in some ways. So here you go.
Let's talk about Tesla. Okay, what was it? More than 2 years ago, you're at Sohn. You pitched the converts.
Converts, yeah.
Where are you with those today? And then I want to talk to you more broadly about that company.
So if you take a step back, right? If I asked you to sort of, attempt to drive a golf ball off the pier here into a teacup and gave you 1 million tries, I suspect that in 1 million times you would not be able to do it. But if you then took somebody else and they were able to do it 9 times out of 10, you'd say, wow, that person is a great golfer. The analogy that I would make is Elon basically did that equivalent. He was able to send a rocket into space, do all kinds of interesting, enormously productive, useful things for the world while in space, and then come back down and land on a boat in the middle of the ocean. The kind of technical sophistication that he has in his mind, that he's been able to apply across his companies, is second to none, quite honestly. So when we looked at Tesla, what we thought was a company at an inflection point that was as close to its version of an iPhone moment. And what I mean by that is a company that had been growing up, taking risks, and had finally found the mass market product that would unlock an enormous amount of product market fit. And that was the Model 3. And so far, what I would say is he's living up to what he has signed up for, which is to commercialize electrification, to commercialize an incredible user experience at a price point that has frankly cannibalized its competitors. And what you see in the results, in my opinion, is a company that is now maturing under all of that demand. And so, again, is it the best suited company if you want to drive and observe quarter-over-quarter precision and performance? No. But if you want to take a step back and take a 3-5-year view and say, where can I compound my money? And particularly with the converts, what's so beautiful is it's downside protected because it sits on top of all the equity and the other debt. And so if you have any concern that there's liquidity issues, or if you have any concerns that the company may have to sell, they get paid first. So to me, it was a riskless option on the Edison of our generation.
But you weren't you weren't necessarily comfortable enough with the story to buy the common stock?
The reason is because the common stock is not controlled, unfortunately, enough by him or the insiders. What it's controlled by are a bunch of vulture-like venture and hedge funds, mostly hedge funds, who like to prey on that company. If you look at, for example, the Twitter traffic, or if you look at the forum traffic around Tesla, the amount of hyping or under-hyping, the amount of sniping is enormous. All of that signals to me that it is a market that is out of the control of the founders and the executives and firmly in the hands of financial manipulators.
Oh, come on.
So my perspective is buy the bonds, you're protected, and allow Elon to execute.
Isn't the founder and his actions responsible for a lot of what you're talking about?
Well, all I see, frankly, is that he has tried to execute to the best of his abilities. He puts out aggressive numbers. He tries to meet those numbers. Sometimes he misses those numbers. What would you rather have?
Often he misses the numbers.
But that's okay, because in the course of the year or in the course of the 5 years, if you take a 5-year step back and say, what has he promised in 2014 to what is he doing in 2019, you'd be ecstatic. Similarly, if you take a step back and say from 2019 to 2024, let the man do his job, will we be better or worse off as a planet, as a species, as humanity, as consumers? We will be better off.
And no one debates his genius. It's lauded, celebrated. It's the fact that the way he runs his company. You're comfortable with that? If you're an investor in Tesla, you're 100% comfortable with the way he is a CEO?
Yeah.
None of the actions that he's done over the last year or so give you pause at all?
What do you mean? Meaning the Model 3 is an incredible car. I just bought one. It's incredible. I bought it the way that it was...
Funding secured? I mean, what was that?
Okay, maybe he stepped out of bounds. My point is, you're getting caught up in the window dressing. I'm focusing on the main course. The main course is on the table. The choice for you as a buyer or a seller of that stock is, do you want to eat it? If you get caught up in all of the stuff around the edges, maybe he may mistweet from time to time. My point is, who cares? Your job as a smart investor is to separate the facts and the news from the fiction and the noise. And all of that stuff doesn't matter. It does not change the fact that tens of thousands of consumers are buying that car faster than they can get their hands on it. It doesn't change that the minute you sit inside that car, your definition of what is expected is altered forever. And you wonder why every other car around you that you ever step in, that you may buy, doesn't have the same things that that car offers. So at the end of the day, whether you like his style or not, his substance is irrefutable.
Sure, but I walked down the street here in San Francisco the other day. I see a billboard for the new Audi electric car that's coming. I mean, competition is coming. If it's not already here, that gives you no pause?
You're right, because I remember all the Zune media players I bought after Apple released the iPod. I also remember the enormous number of amazing smartphones I bought when the iPhone was launched. It's not what people do. You know, it tends to be the case that when you redefine expectations and you have a category leader and you have an indelible brand and a mark that people recognize, the easiest decision, let me be a little pejorative, the lazy decision is to pick the winner and go with it. And in this case, there is a clear winner in electrification. It is done. That die has been cast. And so now the question is, can he build the infrastructure to deliver the demand? And if given time and if given patience, I believe he will, and I vote with my money that he can do that. And everybody that bets against him can do that as well, but at what stake really? Because it's not as if there's no downside protection for the stock. The people who short this company are so short-sighted because the number of companies that would come out of the woodwork, you don't think that Apple, with $200 billion of cash, backstops this company and has a chance to enter $1 trillion market overnight by buying that business if it gets imperiled in any way? Google, which already tried to buy it, wouldn't try to buy it again?
I'd say it's a risk.
So what are we betting against? We're betting against a cleaner Earth because we don't like that. We like to suck in the carbon monoxide and the fumes from all these cars. We're betting against beautiful flat screens, beautiful ways in which to manage your experience inside the car because we don't like that.
No, we're betting against whether he can deliver what he says, the fundamentals of the company. That's what they're betting against.
No, that's not true. People are betting against his style. They don't like his style.
It's not just that.
It
Come
is
on,
just
there's smart people like Jim Chanos. He's a smart investor. He's not betting just on his style.
Jim Chanos makes money once a decade. And while the market rips up, the guy just bleeds money and he's never on CNBC. And every time something works, he's there for 5 minutes. Great for Jim Chanos. Fantastic as a hedge in a portfolio where you have 1% in a short fund. But the reality is, being long equities makes sense. Being long innovation makes sense. Betting against entrepreneurs that are changing the world has never been a profitable endeavor. Why start now?
I'm sure Mr. Chanos is going to take issue with your numbers and some of your comments. And
I'm happy to post my returns against Chanos anytime he wants.
Right. We'll step away for a moment. Up next, widely followed tech investor Dan Niles making...
First of all, a round of applause for Chamath. That was so brilliantly handled. So many great lines in there. Just like ultimate just comebacks. The Zune thing was great. I love the golf shot analogy at the beginning with regard to Elon. But what I want to talk about here, so, you know, I don't talk a lot about Tesla stock on here or investing very much because I'm not a shareholder and I don't really know that world very well. That's the honest answer. It's not one of my strengths. So and honestly, it's not really a particular interest of mine either. Now, some of you might not care about that at all, but my point in playing that clip, because it went around the Tesla community like wildfire this week, is to show, as you probably picked up on your own, how anti-Tesla some people can just blatantly be. You know, CNBC isn't MSNBC. They're not Fox News. They are a financial network. And yet, I doubt any of you out there would disagree. You could hear the bias in Scott Wapner, the host's voice and words there. First, he went after Elon's character, and then he couldn't refute any of Chamath's points. But it was just unreal. It was like the guy was on Chanos's payroll, who's, Chanos is a notorious Tesla short, like one of the big name ones. And you heard Chamath just ripping into just major sick burn on Chanos there at the end. But and that's so. I want to dwell not as much on the negative with the host there, but just again to come back and talk about how great Chamath was there, how impressive he was. This is a guy who is a very big deal in the financial world. Very big deal. So, he's on this show, and he's not a small time guest. This guy's a big deal. And Chamath, he made 8 minutes there. He made such a calm, factual, rational case for why he's bullish on Tesla. There was nothing sensational about his demeanor or his words. He wasn't ranting and raving or throwing his arms around, gesticulating. The host there, Scott, had no answer, just no answer for it. It was a masterful segment by Chamath, and I tell you, I felt compelled because the world's so full of negativity. I tweeted Chamath just to let him know how much I appreciated how well I thought he did on that segment. I hope he saw it. Guy's got a lot of followers. I don't know if he actually saw it, but you got to just put it out, put the positivity out there, and hope it got into his eyeballs and maybe made him feel good for a second. But the reality is, again, this is what Tesla is up against in every single corner of the business world, the media, the rest of the automotive industry. It's just the union thing. Wall Street. It's unreal. Every just resistance, massive, coordinated, intense, often fiction-based resistance from every corner of the business world. It's just unbelievable. Now, if you're thinking, hey, Ryan, I think you might want to take off the tinfoil hat here. Hey, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. But there's one other interesting element to this story, and I alluded to it before I played the clip. The reason that it went around the community wasn't so much because of Scott Wapner or even because of Chamath, although he was great. But the reality is, CNBC took that video off of its website and then kept blocking it when people tried to re-upload the full unedited clip. And when they finally, even Elon called it out on Twitter. And after that, they did post it themselves, but only on their website, not on YouTube, and it was an edited down version to remove some of Chamath's comments there. So it's just, again, it's crazy to me, even though, you think, hey, well, maybe I should be used to it by now, but I think it's not okay to normalize this stuff. We've got to keep calling it out as bad and crazy and not right and not normal. But this is what Tesla's up against every single day. Thankfully, as Chamath wisely points out in that segment, the product, the Teslas, the cars, the product is simply too good. That is why Tesla keeps winning despite these constant gale force headwinds that are constantly in their face. I think back to John DeLorean. For those of you maybe that are newer listeners, you didn't hear episode 1, you haven't been with me, maybe you don't know. I used to own a DeLorean. I had it for 12 years. It was my dream car as a kid. From when I saw Back to the Future, that was it. That was the car that was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. And I was so lucky that they were relatively low cost enough. Now, they really were in hindsight, what I paid for it when I got it. They were, and they still are, they're not like $1 million cars by any stretch of the imagination. So, I was so lucky I got to have one for a while. And so I'm very familiar with the world of DeLorean. And in fact, DeLorean is, in a roundabout way, how I came to Tesla. That's, I guess tell you the super quick version of the story is, I used to be part of the Northern California DeLorean owners group. I mean, I still am, just not as an owner. And when I learned about Tesla, I heard about it. I was like, oh, there's this new company that is, they got an all electric sports car, and they're based here in the Bay Area. That's interesting. And DeLorean had a partnership with Lotus, and they were built in the UK and Northern Ireland. And wow, Tesla is. They got a part. Lotus builds the gliders for the Roadsters, and they're both American startups that were both trying to do things in a newer, better, different way. In DeLorean's case, safety was a big priority. The car being stainless steel, so that it would outlive its owner and not be just another cog in the machine of planned obsolescence, which was the hallmark of Detroit automotive technology and business in the 70s and early 80s. And there were just these bizarre little similarities. And so when I reached out to Tesla on a whim, and I got, Daisy, what's the matter? It's okay. Come on over here. Sorry. She's, why are you crying? All right, the next break, I'll take you out. Anyway, I reached out to Tesla and said, hey, I'd love to maybe coordinate a DeLorean Club event at your one and only showroom, which also included a back separate building where the gliders from Lotus would come in and the battery packs would come in from, I think, might have been like Taiwan, or maybe, I guess, was it still Panasonic back then? I don't recall. Anyway, and they would mate the power electronics and the battery packs to the cars, finish assembly, and then deliver them to customers. And they kindly had us in, and we had a great turnout. There were 17 DeLoreans there at that event that day. That was more than we ever had at any other event ever. And afterwards, I wrote them to thank them and say, gosh, thank you guys so much. They had us in, they gave us the tour, they spent a lot of time with us. And they wrote back and said, would you like to come and take a drive in the Roadster? And so I said yes. And from there, as soon as I drove the Roadster, that was my aha moment, and I never looked back. And it took me many years to own my own Tesla, but here I am. Anyway, the point of all that is to say that I am very familiar with the DeLorean story as I am with the Tesla story now. And that's where I say that Tesla keeps winning despite these just massive headwinds. Because John DeLorean, his story, and the DeLorean Motor Company, John beat himself. He defeated himself. That's a much longer story. There's a movie coming out this June that's sort of a half documentary, half like dramatic reenactment thing, starring Alec Baldwin as DeLorean. And it looks very interesting, and it's called Framing DeLorean, and it looks like it's like interviews with her. Anyway, that's for another podcast, I guess, for the DeLorean show that I haven't started yet. Anyway, DeLorean beat himself. DeLorean didn't have the type of forces working against him that Tesla does now, and yet Tesla still survives and thrives, and it's incredible. It's just incredible. Tesla has it so much harder than DeLorean ever did. But again, the products are so good, bringing it back around to Chamath's original point and really main thesis. The cars are so good, the product's so good, that Tesla is succeeding despite everybody being against them and trying to change the narrative against them into the negative at every single turn. It's unreal. Anyway, on a related topic, remember on the Q1 earnings call recap episode last week when Elon talked about being open to raising capital, to doing an offering? Well, they've done it this week. It is for $2 billion, and it is out there. The Autonomy Day, it seems to me now, that Autonomy Day, which was for investors, clearly in hindsight now was a way to provide the investor confidence needed for this. And in fact, Elon alluded to that on a private call with investors. He said, this is, quote, Musk confidently told investors on the call that autonomous driving will transform Tesla into a company with a $500 billion market cap. So not much to add to that other than to say that here's hoping it does give Tesla the financial cushion and the additional financial resources that it needs to execute on its plan that I believe in and that really everybody listening to this believes in and supports. Well, a big part of the plan moving forward for Tesla is, of course, the Gigafactory and establishing more of them to drive costs down and keep battery cell production up, to keep the supply enough to meet the demand. Gigafactory 3 in Shanghai is well underway. And in fact, what I'm about to tell you here is that Shanghai, Gigafactory 3 is progressing at an incredible rate. And this is not an exaggeration. Teslarati, via a Chinese publication called The Global Times, reports, quote, local news agency The Global Times paid a visit to Gigafactory 3 last week, where the publication was able to get some information about the project from one of the workers in the facility. According to the Gigafactory 3 worker who opted to remain anonymous, the facility is on track to start building electric cars as early as September, notably ahead of Tesla CEO Elon Musk's estimate, end quote. So, to be fair, that could mean test production, that could mean real production. We don't know, and it's probably too early to tell. But if you follow Tesla stuff on Twitter at all, you've probably seen the almost daily updates that seem to go up both in picture and video form. And the reason that the updates are daily is because every single day when you wake up, the thing looks totally different. The skeleton is moving right along. They've got a roof on the place. It's unbelievable. Apparently, it is on track to quite possibly break China's record for the fastest, quote, industrial-grade facility construction project ever, which currently stands at that. The current record is 17 months to completion. But remember Elon's previous comments about production in China at Gigafactory 3. They're going to be focused on cranking out standard range and standard range plus Model 3s, which, of course, are all the same cars from a manufacturing perspective. I mean, it makes sense, given that they're going to be, they of course have to scale up. They just can't hit the ground running at 5,000 cars a week. Remember, the plan is to hopefully get up to 1,000 cars per week by the end of the year. So, they'll be able to build a whole lot more 50 kilowatt battery hour cars than they can 75s, the long range and the dual motor variants as they initially ramp up. And they'll have, I'll tell you, they've got about, thankfully they are so ahead that they're going to end up having roughly 9 to 12 months or so in order to get up to speed. And then they should, at that point, hopefully be able to hit the ground running on Model Y production when Tesla's ready to build those next fall. So exciting times ahead for Tesla's growing global footprint there. Meanwhile, good news in Canada. Let's continue our trip around the world. A quick note here. Tesla clearly wagging its finger at the Canadian government for setting its electric vehicle rebate up so that it excluded the Model 3. You may remember me talking about that story a month or two back. Tesla is offering a 150 kilometer range Model 3 just so that they can squeak under the MSRP limit in order to qualify for the 5,000 Canadian dollar rebate. So if you're doing a double take right now and be like, wait a minute, 150 kilometers, yeah, you were right to do that double take. So the conversion for those of us in America, that is 93 miles. That is a 93-mile car. So it's obviously software locked. Basically, Tesla doesn't want you to have that. You can order it if you really want to, and then software unlock the rest of the range. Or, more preferably, the Standard Range Plus is actually able to be sold at regular price, and it still qualifies for the rebate because the rules of this rebate program state that the base model has to be under a certain price, but any options or things that you add don't count against the limit. So you can load up autopilot, white interior if you wanted, all that stuff. So the standard range plus is good to go. Or again, you can pay to unlock the full range potential of the 150 kilometer / 93 mile car later on. So very good news there for Canadian standard range plus Model 3 buyers. Just a couple more quick notes this week. One is that a smaller demand lever is being pulled by Tesla right now. From right now through May 27th, so the bulk of this month, Tesla is offering 5,000 miles of free supercharging for new orders that use a referral code, which the referring person also gets. That's up from the 1,000 miles that it had been offering since the relaunch of the referral program. And I have to tell you, I like this better than the 6 months of unlimited supercharging that they were offering last year because, in my opinion, I think most people probably wouldn't use 5,000 miles worth in 6 months anyway, no matter what they were doing. So this way, you can use those miles anytime. So if you're going to take a, say, 2,000 mile road trip this summer, and maybe another one over the holidays in the fall / winter, you'll be able to get full value out of that perk rather than, maybe 1,000 or 2 miles in a 6 month window. So again, on that, make sure if you are going to order a car, and this applies to anyone anywhere, UK, China, Europe, or the US, North America, Canada, make sure you use somebody's referral code because now, 5,000 miles on the table for you if you're ordering 5,000 free miles worth of supercharging. Again, please consider my code a last resort. Find it if you've got a friend, family member, coworker that whose code you can use. Get both of you the miles. But if you don't have any other Tesla owners in your life, you're welcome to use mine again as a last resort. So you order from the link, which is ts.la/Ryan73014. But hopefully you've got another person in mind that you can use. But that is a nice perk. 5,000 miles, that's a lot of supercharging miles. That's almost across the United States and back. It's about 80% of that trip of going across country from San Francisco to New York and back. So that's pretty darn cool. That's a nice bonus right there. And finally this week, Tesla pushed out new safety features to the Model 3 fleet late this week. In fact, yesterday, as I record this, Thursday night even, with the Model S and Model X to follow suit very soon. And those features are lane departure avoidance and emergency lane departure avoidance. They are designed to, as you'd imagine, help keep you in your lane. And those are self-explanatory, but just a quick note here. Again, this is what rocks about Tesla. One of many things. Your car not only gets better after delivery with new features. How many new features? If you took delivery on January 1st of this year, you've already gotten in 4 months a whole bunch of cool new features. So your car not only gets better after delivery with new features, your car gets safer since you bought it. Think about that for just a second. Your car is safer now, has more safety features than when you bought it. That's awesome. That is just so cool. I love it. Hats off to Tesla and the Tesla team. That is great stuff. All right, that's the end of the news segment for this week. I'm going to come right back. Got a full complement of Ride the Lightning hotline calls from you guys, all queued up and ready to go. Stay tuned for that right after this. Time for the Ride the Lightning hotline. It's your time to shine. Your questions, your comments, your discussion topics. You can call in anytime, one of two easy ways. Either use your smartphone's built-in voice recording software and record your question. Please try to keep it to 90 seconds or less. And send that to me via email at teslapodcast@gmail.com. Alternatively, you can do the same thing, try to keep the call to 90 seconds or so, and you can actually call into the Ride the Lightning hotline. You're just calling and leaving a message to the toll-free number, which is 1-888-989-8752. Again, that's 1-888-989-TSLA. And hey, if you know someone special with an upcoming birthday, anniversary, graduation, or some other special occasion, you can give them a unique gift of recorded voices from friends and family telling them why they're special. The recordings can be podcasted or put onto a keepsake. Visit lifeonrecord.com to learn more. Let's start down in Australia with Eric, a caller we've heard from before. He wanted to comment on the Autonomy Day that I covered last week. Eric, you're on the air.
Thank you, Ryan. It's Eric Levin from Australia. I hope you had a wonderful holiday and you are back fully energized. We missed your show, although your stand-in show last week was very enjoyable, so I don't mind that again a couple of times a year, as you said. I just want to make a quick comment on full self-driving event. Elon mentioned that the cars will probably not have any manual controls once the full self-driving comes into effect, which is perfectly understandable for carting people around streets and using it as a taxi service. However, there will no doubt be times where you want to put the car in the places where the autopilot just doesn't understand what you want to do. And I think some manual input may well be necessary. Perhaps we can remove the pedals and the steering wheel and replace them with a small joystick that disappears maybe into the dash. You can call it out when you need it, and it could be speed limited to maybe 20 or 30 kilometers per hour, or perhaps geo-fenced so that you can't use it on public streets. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Love your show. Great to have you back. Thanks, man.
This is a fair point, Eric, and thank you for the kind words, by the way. It seems like there are just so many million edge cases that deleting the wheel and pedals feels like an impossible step. But Elon sounded so, at least to me, sounded so nonchalant about it, and he's obviously looking at this stuff every day, that they must be planning for just about everything. I do agree that there might need to be some way to manually override a car that doesn't have any inputs in it, if necessary. You know, some sort of plug-in could work. I mean, heck, the military uses Xbox controllers to guide missile systems, I think. They've used it for something. I think it's missile systems. So maybe literally an Xbox controller could do it, hooked into a PC that's at the Tesla mothership, tapped into the car. I don't know. It'd be like a game of Forza Motorsport, the most realistic game ever. But trying to think of another way. Maybe Tesla could tap into the car's cameras and control it, totally remotely if necessary. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what the contingency plans are for a particularly quirky situation that a steering wheel and pedal-less self-driving Tesla might somehow find itself in. Anthony from Los Angeles is up next. He has some comments on Tesla's Q1 loss that was covered last week on the earnings call recap. Anthony, go ahead.
Hey, Ryan, this is Anthony from Los Angeles. I just thought I had to call in because, I'm seeing the tweets about Tesla's $700 million loss from Q1, and I'm mind blown. I feel like with this Tesla with this S and X announcement, with the new drivetrain, this new 370 mark, I feel like this is maybe something to calm down the investors because of the S and X selling horribly. And I just wanted to get your thought on this. Is this, was this pushed out early? Was it this upgraded S and X? Was this pushed out early? Maybe this was done, but not the exterior redesign. And so they just decided, let's push out the drivetrain upgrade and the suspension and all that stuff. Should we push it out now to calm down investors? And then, we'll push back the exterior redesigns. I feel like these happening within 24 hours, there just has to be some correlation here. And I just wanted to get your thought on that. But anyways, I love the show, Ryan, and you're the best, man. Yeah.
it's not an entirely unreasonable hypothesis, Anthony. To be fair, Tesla can't just flip a switch and do this stuff overnight. They've been planning for it much longer than when they knew that Q1 was going to be a tough quarter. I would bet on that. That said, we can't necessarily rule out the possibility that these efficiency and suspension updates were going to be part of a full, or at least a bigger redesign, and maybe they did pull it in earlier into Q1, or I guess, Q2, when they realized that the S and X sales were slumping a bit and it was going to be a bumpy quarter. So, it's also possible that we could switch out one word from your call. Switch interior for every time you said exterior, and that could also be plausible. We'll see if Tesla makes it through the rest of the year without a major update to either the interior, the exterior, or both. I'm very, very curious to see how the S and the X, particularly the S since it's older, progresses here. Thank you for your call. Kevin from Dublin, a first-time caller, wants to comment on UK pricing now that that has been opened up. So Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hi Ryan, Kevin here from Dublin, Ireland. Big fan of the show, and this was my first time calling in. With the recent release of the right-hand drive configuration tool for the UK, I contacted my local Tesla showroom to inquire about Irish prices. I was told that the standard range plus price will be €49,000, which is the equivalent of around $55,000. This €49,000 includes a government grant of about €5,000 on the purchase of new Irish EVs. I'm a big Tesla fan, but I feel it's as important to highlight their failings as well as their successes. $55,000, in my opinion, is not an affordable car. I think Elon has failed to meet his targets for a mass market, affordable EV car, which is especially annoying for us in Ireland because we have to wait 2 years since the release of the car to even configure a Model 3. To say that myself and other Irish Tesla fans are disappointed is an understatement. Anyway, keep up the good work. I'll keep listening in the hopes that prices come down, as my 2-year reservation won't be used anytime soon. Thanks.
Can I start off by saying that I adore Dublin. Dublin is one of the cities, one of the few European cities I've had the good fortune of spending some time in. Talking about my DeLorean history earlier in the show, I was in Ireland for 10 days as part of a DeLorean 20th anniversary celebration back in 2001. Now, the cars were built in Dunmurry, which is outside of Belfast. I flew in to Dublin, however, and I went with a DeLorean owner friend of mine from back east, and we were going to stay in Dublin for like a couple days and then head up for the rest of the 10-day trip to Belfast. And we loved Dublin so much. We ended up staying there the entire time except the DeLorean event for like the 3 days that was going. So we ended up doing like 7 days in Dublin and 3 up in Belfast. Dublin's just tremendous. The Guinness Brewery tour was so awesome, and the like Jetson style round glass window bar that you go up to at the very end of the tour, and you get a fresh pint and you can see the whole city, because or at least there was back then, there was an ordinance, I believe, that limited the height of buildings. So you didn't have any giant skyscrapers. Just stunning. What a beautiful city. What a fun time. Actually, also the place where I had my first legal drink. Had a pint of Guinness because I was there. I was 20. I was turning 21 later that year. And the drinking age there is 18, I think it is. And yeah, I was like, well, I got to do it while I'm here. And there you go. I love Dublin. Anyway, Kevin, I'm very happy to hear from you. And I will say I'm sorry to hear that it's under these circumstances. I'm not sure why Tesla's priced the cars the way they did for Ireland. And I want to make clear that I don't even pretend to understand their reasoning. But this is one of those times for me where I'm going to say something I've said here before. And that is that, again, for me, Tesla has earned the benefit of the doubt. As it applies to this case, I have to imagine that there is a good reason for the price being what it is. Tesla has never shown in my opinion, never shown any intention of trying to maximize profits or stick it to their customers in any general way, shape, or form. So I'm not sure what the full story is here, but I'm confident that we don't know the whole story. So, Kevin, I hope you're able to get your Model 3 soon, one way or the other, and thanks so much for calling in. Let's go to John in Toronto. Wanted to talk about a peculiar thing on his Model 3 compared to some others that he has seen. So, John, go ahead.
Hey, Ryan, it's John from Toronto. Second time calling in. Great podcast, as always. I have a question for you. On my Model 3 all-wheel drive long-range car I got in October of last year, I noticed that the UV coating is only on the driver's side, passenger side, right above me. And when it's raining, I noticed that that's coming up with a nice goldy, rusty color. But the back passenger roof of my Tesla does not have that UV goldy color, so it looks like it's just a very dark tint. I have noticed that on other Model 3 cars, that UV glow is coming from their back windows as well, and I'm not sure why mine isn't doing that. So maybe you can give me a hint as to why I've got this situation and others have the full UV coating on top of their roof. So that's it. Thanks again. Talk to you soon.
John, I am indeed familiar with this phenomenon. You are not the only one affected. Many Model 3s up into the summer 2018 builds, and beyond that, actually, starting there, have either maybe one or the other of the glass roof pieces with the tint that turns reddish when it's wet. Most of the early cars, meaning sort of up through summer, basically that first year of production, which I come in at the tail end of, have both roof pieces have that reddish tint. So there seemed to be I don't even know if it's fair to call it a window of time where this has happened, or if it's just sort of a hit and miss thing now, seemingly based on, it's got to be a multiple supplier thing for Tesla, multiple glass suppliers. So where one or the other doesn't have the reddish tint on it. Now, according to Reddit discussions at the time, and again, I'm talking last summer here when this first popped up and people were noticing it, folks would contact Tesla and get told that the glass has the same UV protection. It was just made differently and didn't have that reddish tint to it when it got wet. So apparently it's totally fine. There's nothing faulty. There's nothing lacking about the glass that doesn't have the reddish tint to it. You don't need to request a replacement of any sort. So I hope that helps. Hope that helps clear up the mystery just a little bit. I'm going to go now to Charles in Phoenix. Has some questions now that his first summer in Phoenix is coming up with his Tesla. So I'm well familiar with Phoenix summers. Charles, you're on the air.
Hi there. This is Charles Kendall from Phoenix, Arizona. I was calling because it's going to be my first summer here with the Tesla. And as it started to heat up, it has that setting so that the AC kicks on every time it gets above 104 degrees. So I've asked a few places, and I keep getting conflicting answers. Should I leave that on throughout the summer here in Phoenix? Because that would be pretty much all the time. The thing is, I'm not too worried about heating it up before I get in, because I can just do that from the app. But is it actually protecting the electronics on the inside of the car? If that's the case, then I'll go ahead and leave it, and I'll just plug it in as much as I can. And that's pretty much it. It's first time calling, and I've been listening for a while. Thanks. Bye.
Hi, Charles. Welcome to the podcast, and thank you for your call. Well, the cars are designed to operate normally, including all their electronics, like I'm sure you're thinking about, the screen and the battery pack. They're all designed to operate normally in pretty extreme temperatures either way, hot or cold. So the short answer is you don't have to worry about it. It's good of you to think about, but I've got plenty of listeners in Arizona as well as family members who could call in and reassure you. By the way, a note to my Arizona friends, no need to do that unless you've got any specific advice for Charles. You know, my cousin Pat, who I mention from time to time, he's had his Model S for 6 years now. And while his is garaged at home, it obviously spends plenty of time out there in the heat. He's totally fine. His car is totally fine. You know, any car in Arizona, I speak from personal experience. Remember, I don't know why the DeLorean theme seems to be threading through this episode, but so be it. I owned a DeLorean in Arizona for a few years before I moved here, and I drove it every day. And that thing was, remember, stainless steel body and toll booth windows, which means they were little tiny window cutouts. The whole window in the door didn't go down. It was just the way the door was cut, the way the door was shaped. Only just this little tiny thing where you could stick your arm out. They were called toll booth windows because they were big enough to roll down. Of course, they were power windows. It was like, boop, and the thing was down in 2 seconds. Stick your arm out, and they're, you know, in the 80s, back when we had toll booths that you would actually have to throw money into, you reach your arm out and throw your money into the toll booth, into the basket. So hence the name toll booth windows. So anyway, I had the stainless steel toll booth window DeLorean. So I'm very, very familiar with how hot a car can get in Arizona between the months of basically May and September, no matter what you're doing. So the Teslas are designed for it. They're built for it. Drive it and enjoy it without worry, Charles. Stefan from Monterey is up next, and he's got a windshield issue. See if I can help him out. Stefan, you're on the air.
Hey, Ryan. Stefan from Monterey. I wanted to let you know that I'm finding myself in the same situation as you were in not too long ago regarding the windshield of my Tesla Model 3. I picked up a rock which caused a little chip, and because of the heat, developed into a long crack along the whole front of my windshield. It's almost across the whole thing. And I went to my local MEAL authorized service center, filed the whole claim with the insurance. That wasn't the problem, but Tesla doesn't have any windshields. I called Tesla customer service, and indeed they don't know when they're going to get them in. They're having a supply issue with the supplier of the windshields, and they couldn't even give me a time frame. So it's really frustrating. So when I heard you talking about your story, I thought, well, I'm glad I didn't find myself in that position, and here I am actually in that position. It's really disappointing. So now I really can sympathize with what you went through. So I'll keep you posted. Thanks. Bye.
Hi, Stefan. 2 quick things I want to say about this. First, we heard Elon talk not too long ago about service and parts being his number one priority, and they're getting parts into service centers. So let's hope that that's happening sooner rather than later to help alleviate these exact kind of situations. Second, I have one piece of advice for you if you haven't tried this already. Log into your Tesla account, go into your car, click on Manage next to your car, and then click on Request Help. Choose Body Shop from the drop-down menu, and then summarize your situation, ask for some help politely, respectfully. In my experience, that will get seen by someone. That's going to create an email that's going to get sent to an email alias that is checked by human beings. And hopefully that'll help get things jump-started for you. Good luck to you. Dave from here in San Francisco has a question about supercharging. Dave, go ahead.
Hey, Ryan, this is Dave from San Francisco again. I'm getting to be a regular caller here. Hey, I'm sitting here at an EV event in San Francisco at City College, and we have a question for you about lifetime supercharging. Does it stay with the car if you sell it? And was there ever a time where you could, if you had lifetime charging, you could transfer it to a new car? I told this other Tesla owner that I didn't think that was ever a possibility, but he says, call Ryan and find out. So that's what I did. Okay. Love your podcast. Ciao.
Short but sweet answer for you here, Dave. You are right. It follows the car and not the owner. It's for the life of the car, but sadly you cannot take it with you to another Tesla. So all the best to you, Dave. Jim from New Jersey wants to talk about the auto sensing wipers right now. So Jim, let's hear it.
Hey Ryan, how you doing? This is Jim Pollack over in Fairhaven, New Jersey. With the Tesla having automatic windshield wipers, what do you think of detecting that it's raining and you're not in the car and the windows automatically going up? Just want to know your thoughts. Thank you.
Jim, a short and sweet call that gets straight to the point. I like that. And by the way, I agree with you. That seems like a nice toggle to be able to set in the UI so that you could have the car do that if you wanted to, but leave it off if for whatever reason you'd rather not have the car roll up the windows in that situation. So, hey, hopefully the Tesla team out there hears your call and adds it onto the feature list. Michael from Wyoming, 2 calls left, so the penultimate caller is Michael from Wyoming, and he has a suggestion for autopilot that I quite like, so let's hear from Michael.
Hey Ryan, Michael from Wyoming calling. Just listened to your latest episode on the autonomy presentation. Thought it was really great. I enjoyed watching it as well. Something I've been hung up on for a couple weeks now is the whole pothole scenario that you talked about. I think this is the one case where, and maybe there's some others, where it'd be nice if Tesla considered these, semi-static road obstacles and plugged it into the database so that, if I'm a driver and, there's lots of potholes that we all hit that we try our best to avoid, and I can't help but think that the full self-driving is going to have some of those issues as well. Autopilot has those today. And why should I hit it and then every car behind me hit it, including the Teslas that are on the network? Somehow there needs to be a way to consider those events and help the rest of the fleet and others to avoid those potholes that are really hard to avoid just visually. If it's programmed into a database and they know it's coming up, they can easily drift, to one side or the other to avoid it. I think, it'd be a nice thing to kind of build up as this pothole database and potentially share with municipalities so that we had this sort of tracking of the most impactful road damage that they could prioritize, because these are the ones that we can't seem to avoid. And, what a benefit to everyone that would be to, not damage so many tires and wheels. I think some of the worst ones out there probably go through thousands of tires and wheels before, they actually get fixed. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I think the direction is really great. I just, kind of hope they take some learnings from, outside of the internal network and do some more connected to the wider public with something like this or other ideas. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.
I couldn't agree with you more, Michael. Based on what we heard from Andrej Karpathy about machine learning and teaching the neural net, there's got to be a way for the cars to be taught what a pothole generally looks like, and then program it to maybe follow, and I don't know anything here, so I'm sort of talking off the cuff, but maybe program it to follow some sort of protocol of either moving left if the car detects that there's no one else around, or moving right if there's someone on the left, or maybe as a last resort, you just have to go over it if there's no other safe option to maneuver around it. If the neural net can be taught all kinds of weird stuff, like they were talking about, then potholes seem like a solvable problem. By the way, I also love your idea about sharing that pothole database with municipalities to try and expedite pothole repair. You are being super smart and super civic-minded about that. So great stuff, Michael. Thank you so much. And our last call this week, last but most certainly not least, Ken in California wanted to comment on the Standard Range / Standard Range Plus Model 3. Go ahead, Ken.
Ryan, it's Ken in California. Just a thought on the discussion on the Standard Range Model 3 and the Standard Range Plus. It's pretty clear to me that they're probably going to drop the Standard Range Model 3 and replace it with the Standard Range Plus and make the Standard Range Plus the $35,000 Model 3. As soon as they can afford to do that, just getting their costs down, it's going to take a little bit. So I think that's what's happening. Thanks.
I hadn't really thought about it that way, Ken. Good point. Elon did say that the Standard Range will be sticking around, but he didn't say in what form. because they can redefine what the standard range means anytime they want. I mean, once Tesla, as you pointed out, can afford to make the standard range plus the standard, they may very, very well do just that. I think you're onto something there. Great call. Thank you so much, Ken. Way to take us home. Again, if you would like to participate in the Ride the Lightning hotline, I welcome it. I invite it. I would love to hear from you. Give me a call either by using your smartphone's built-in voice recording software and emailing me your 90-second or so or less call to teslapodcast@gmail.com, or just call in anytime, day or night, and leave a message on the toll-free Ride the Lightning hotline. The number again for that, 1-888-989-8752. Be right back with some thoughts on the not-so-great week that I had in the spirit of adventure, and final thoughts for you right after this. Oh, real quick, I meant to mention this at the end of the Ride the Lightning hotline segment because one of the regular callers, Maturshan from Toronto, just wanted to say congratulations to you on taking delivery of your new Model 3. That is fantastic. All right, as for the spirit of adventure, what I've been up to, I guess I shouldn't have maybe phrased it quite. It wasn't that bad of a week, but get this. I had another nail in the tire. Technically, it was a screw this time. And it was seemingly in a perfectly patchable, relatively good place if you're going to get a nail. It was just right in the middle of the tread, like right in the middle of the tire, not near the sidewall at all. I take it in for service. I'd made an appointment. Took about, I guess it was about a week wait to get the appointment. I was losing, basically when I came back from my vacation, I was down a few PSI on the right rear tire. So I thought, okay, well, that's not a great sign. I went ahead, topped it up with a compressor at home, and then I'm like, I better check this thing. And sure enough, found the screw like pretty embedded, pretty good in there. I was like, oh, here we go again. So I make the service appointment expecting to just hopefully get it patched, $50 be on my way. Well, I take it in, service advisor comes out and says, sorry to have to tell you this, but it was in the patched tire, so they can't, I guess for safety reasons or structural integrity reasons, I'm not sure which, maybe both, they don't patch more than once. So if you take a nail to a patched tire, they replace the tire. So it just figures because as you guys, I've had to replace one tire because it took two nails, and then I had another nail that was patched. And so that's where I stood. This was my fourth nail in 8 months, and all four nails in two tires. It's basically, I rolled snake eyes on the craps table. If, the luck could have been where I got one nail in each tire and I wouldn't have had to replace any tires. They'd just all be patched and it would have saved me a bunch of money. But no, now I've had to replace two tires in 10,000 miles. When I was talking to a service tech as I was getting in my car to leave, it was just, a little idle chat. I just was grousing to him, very politely. I was just like, oh man, this is the second tire I've had to replace. And he goes, like straight face, like referring to San Francisco streets, the battle of San Francisco streets and the nails in them versus car tires and Tesla specifically, seemingly, at least for him, he goes, it's a war zone out there. And it was just like, yeah, my car's losing. Four nails and two tires being replaced. Because what happened was I didn't actually know which tire was the patched tire because since that patch came in, I had the tires rotated. So I just didn't know where it was anymore because it was the front left tire. And so now I know it went to the back right tire. And so, yeah, as luck would have it, like, oh man, so there's another $400 and Tesla themselves doesn't offer the road hazard warranty. Tire Rack does. I talked about that last time. So I almost feel like what I'm going to have to do now, starting now, is if and when I take another puncture, another sharp object to one of my tires, is if it's one where I can put air in, if it's a slow enough leak, I think I might have to start just ordering tires from Tire Rack, have them shipped, either to my house or even to the Tesla service center, and just like maybe keep them around with the warranty on them. because otherwise it's just going to be an endless churn with Tesla, and I'll never have the road hazard warranty. It's just unbelievable. I gotta buy stock in Michelin, because the P3D takes Michelin tires. I got to buy some stock in that. Speaking of talking about stocks earlier in the show, and the fact that I don't know much about them, but my goodness, it's just go figure. It's almost, you can't help but laugh, right? It's just like, my goodness. The cool thing, though, that I'll mention real quick, a couple of neat sort of unicorn-type sightings at the San Francisco Service Center when I was there. An original Roadster, spotted one of those at the Service Center, which even around here, even in the Tesla bubble that is the Bay Area, I don't see too many original Roadsters running around. Because remember, there were only 2,500 of them made. So even here, there are, relatively speaking, a large number of them, but it's still a small overall number. So I don't see too many of them. It's always good to see a Roadster. And then the other thing I saw, which I've never seen with my own eyes before, it was cool. Right as I was about to get in my car to pull away with my new tire, in came the Saleen Model S. So if you're familiar with Saleen, they're like a well-renowned house that does like really professional big modifications to cars. They'll tweak the exterior, the interior, and then the engine, the suspension. They just basically will put a car on steroids, And they did a Model S. This was several years ago now, and they did one, and I actually didn't realize that they had sold any of them, and I don't say that in an insulting way. I thought that it was just a one-off, like a concept almost that they did, but no, evidently they sold them. It was a black one, had some, the bodywork was pretty nice. I didn't really get a look at the interior. The owner was literally pulling in, and I was pulling out, or about to pull out, and and I know that I had read about it when it came out. I know they tweaked to the battery and the motor output somehow, but what was interesting about it is, unlike other cars that Saleen does, Tesla themselves blew away the performance of the Saleen car, which of course had a pretty massive, I don't remember the exact markup in price. I don't know what the Saleen cost you back in the day, but Tesla themselves blew away the Saleen version's performance like months, if not weeks, after Saleen introduced that car. But it was still cool to see. Like I said, I didn't realize that any of them actually got made. So that was definitely a rare sight to see. Our tip of the week this week comes to us from our friend Jerome up in Lake County, California. Has a supercharging tip. Go ahead, Jerome.
Hey, Brian, it's Jerome up here in Northern California, Lake County. I thought I would give a shot at one of the pro tips, possibly. I just encountered on my Model S a situation where my supercharger cable was a little bit stretched tight, and so when I tried to release it from the car, it wouldn't slide out. And I tried pushing it in a little further, which then released it to pull it out. So I don't know if that's a pro tip, but it certainly is not something that's intuitive, and so I throw it out there. Keep up the great work. Ciao.
That does happen. So thank you, Jerome, for that tip. And again, if you've got a pro tip for your Tesla, any of them, SX3, even original Roadster, fire it my way. Something that you found out about your car that is not super obvious that you might want to share with others. You can send it in the same way that you send in a phone call, which I gave you the instructions for earlier in the show. So that brings us to the end of the podcast. I want to start by mentioning the coupon code running for abstractocean.com, an awesome place to get accessories for your Tesla and you as well. Whether it's a tempered glass screen protector, a vinyl wrap for maybe your center console or other various bits of the car, the TESLA lettering on the trunk lid on the back of the Model 3 if you want to go a little roadster style back there, all kinds of neat stuff. Check them out, browse around, pile up your cart, and then use the coupon code RTL Podcast, all one word, RTL Podcast at checkout to get 15% off of your first order if you're a first-time customer there. Meanwhile, Immaculate Reflections, one of the Bay Area's absolute premier detailers. They take great care of me. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have Jeff make my car look literally as good as it possibly can. I'm so happy to have gotten to know him professionally and personally a little bit too. Just a great guy. That's the thing. It's like that's why I decided to kind of partner up with him here and have him give him the mentions on the show. He's a good, honest person and does great work. So if you're in the Bay Area with your car and you're looking for some detail work, or maybe you're taking delivery at the factory, at Fremont or nearby, Jeff and Immaculate Reflections can take excellent care of you. Learn more at irdetailing.com. For Patreon, that's the number one way to support the show. Totally optional if you want to recognize the amount of effort and time and energy and love that goes into this podcast. All I ask of you is that you listen. That's what you're doing now, obviously. But if you do see fit to support me on Patreon, you can find information about that and all the different support, the tiers and everything, all the little not prizes, but I guess perks that you get that I've got set up over there. You can learn more at my Patreon page, which is patreon.com/Tesla Podcast. Patreon spelled Patreon. And by the way, this is a reminder. Last month's Patreon exclusive bonus episode, which was just overflowing with calls after the Model Y event, I had set that to go free for everyone on May 1st. So that is now, if you'd like to go listen to that, if you're not already backing me on Patreon, you can just go listen to that. It's on the Patreon page. You don't need an account or a membership or anything to go hear that. You just have to scroll down till you find you'll see Patreon only bonus episode. I think it's number, I don't even know which one it is, but it's the most recent one, the one from May. Although it might not quite be the most recent one. My intention is to get the May episode. So it was the April episode that's gone free, and my intention is to get the May episode, the May Patreon bonus episode done this weekend, i.e. by the time any of you hear this. So look for that as well. And what else? Follow me on Twitter, DMC_Ryan. Same thing on Instagram, if you're on there as well. I gave you my email address earlier. The Jada wireless charging pad. If you're grabbing one of those for your Model 3, or maybe you're upgrading, they've got the deal, the discount, which you should have details on in your email if you'd ordered the original version 1, and now they got the version 2. There's a discount, code basically waiting for you if you want to upgrade. But if you're buying one, it's don't have a discount on you for you on that, but it's $100, and you buy it once, and then you have it in your car forever. I'm super satisfied with mine. It is P3D launch proof. Your phone will not go flying. I can personally assure you of that. It does a great job charging the phone. It's awesome, and it looks, for me, big thing, it looks factory original. I'm very big on that. I like, if I'm going to do third-party aftermarket stuff, I want it to look like it's a natural part of the car. It's just how I am. And it does fit that criteria. So if you want to order one, you can. I kindly ask that you use this URL because it's a referral link. Basically, they'll throw me a few bucks if you order it through this, which is getjada.com. That's JEDA for Jada. Getjada.com/REF/8. That is the address there. Finally, of course, the shout out. Actually, subscribe. I forgot to mention this last week. It's super easy to subscribe to this podcast. Again, that costs you nothing. It's totally free. It just means that the podcast will automatically push to you every week. You won't have to go and seek it out yourself. So you can subscribe on any of the major podcast services. That includes iTunes podcasts. That includes Google Podcasts, Stitcher. There's TuneIn, which of course TuneIn is in your Tesla, so you can do it there. Spotify, I'm on that. I have a YouTube channel, which again, all it is, there's no video on there. It's just the audio feed of the show with the image that's on the video is just the logo of the show. But if you prefer to listen to stuff on YouTube, it is there for you as well. Or you can always grab stuff off of the hosting site, which is teslapodcast.libsyn, LIBSYN.com. Time to shout out the Patreon producers, the extra kind folks who kindly support me at the producer tier, which means that among the perks they get shouted out every week. So I want to say hi and thank you to DJ Harbaugh, Pete White, Wolfgang Obergen, George Cassiopo, David Brander, Jonathan Wales, Alexi Heft, Logan Willis, Matthew Para, Michael Lester, Robert Miracle, Jason Chalukas, Joe Edgel, Tim Hyde, Marcus Mayenschein, Lars Hoffman, Lawton from Chicago, Peter Chalet, Rome Strack, David Vakil, Ulrich Lassa, Luke A., Eric Randolph, David Nondal, Gabriel Salays, Jerry and Mary Smith, Brian Hope, Bill Royko, Lyle Austin, Joel Sapp, Dory and Steve Guberman, Luxendary.com, Michael Waddle, Daniel Grummer, Josh, Jeremy Harris, Tesla Owners Taiwan, Rob Brewer, My Tesla Adventure, Ron Lee, Lambert Lee, Chris Konesnik, and John Cody. By the way, John happened to be in town, San Francisco, on a whim this week, and he sent me a message, said, is there any chance you can meet up? And he was kind enough to meet me at the local, the craft brewery that's right up the street from IGN where I work, and just what a wonderful guy. John, it was just an absolute pleasure meeting you. I am so lucky. Every time I get to meet a listener, I'm dead serious. I've never had a bad experience where I'm like, oh man, this is not going well, or in any way negative. Like, it's every time I've gotten to meet anybody that listens to this podcast, it's just been a treat. It's just so much fun to talk Tesla, and I love hearing the different perspectives. John lives in Huntsville, Alabama, so it's like, just hearing about his Tesla life there versus, my Tesla life here in the, the Tesla bubble. Let's be honest. It's cool to hear different experiences and all the, the common ground of how we each sort of came to Tesla. And I chatted with John for an hour plus. I could have gone on for a couple more hours, but my wife would have been real mad if I hadn't come home for dinner. But John, real pleasure. And also real quick, I know the show's going along here, but a quick shout out to Greg from Florida, who I won't tell you the story, but I met Greg this week in one of the most random ways possible. It was extraordinarily random, but it was really fun. Greg's super nice guy. He is a brand new Model S owner. Just got his Model S a couple weeks ago. So Greg, nice to meet you, and congratulations on your new Tesla. Well, that brings me to the end of the podcast. Daisy the Boxer Puppy, you may have heard her stop whining after I guess it was after the hotline or before the hotline. Got her out. She got to run around a little bit, get the yayas out, relieve herself. Now she is very adorably passed out on the couch because she's got one of her favorite toys. It's like right between, she's kind of got her arm out, leg out, and the toy is like nestled between her arm and her chin. It's very cute. It's very, very cute. So for a sleeping Daisy the Boxer puppy, I'm Ryan McCaffrey. Thank you all so much for your time, for your attention. Your time, as I always like to say, is in my opinion, the most valuable thing that you have. And I am flattered and grateful that you would give me what has now become an hour and a half-ish. Last week was almost 2 hours. I figured out last week was the second longest show ever. There was one that was a little longer, way back. I forget which one, but I'll bet it was probably a quarterly earnings show, just like last week's was. But yeah, thanks for hanging in with me last week on the super long show, and certainly this week and every week. Just it means a lot to me that you guys listen and give me your time so generously. So thank you all so much. Happy electric motoring, and I'll see you next week.
I mean, I think a Tesla is the most fun thing you could possibly buy ever. That's what it's meant to be. Well, our goal is to make it's not exactly a car. It's actually a thing to maximize enjoyment. Make it maximum fun.